All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling something that hits close to home for so many of us: fairness at work. You know the deal. We're all taught that if you just follow the rules and have a fair process, you'll get a fair outcome. But what if that's not just a little bit wrong? What if it's a complete illusion? That's the powerful, maybe even shocking idea we're digging into today.
Seriously, just think about that for a moment. Maybe it was a performance review where they checked all the boxes, but the final rating just felt off, like it was personal. Or that promotion process that looked totally objective on paper, but the person who got the job made you go, wait, what? If you've ever had that gut feeling, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's this super common, super frustrating experience. And the paper we're looking at today actually explains why it happens. So let's start with the basics. Let's talk about the big promise, the idea that's been the gold standard in business and research for decades. And here it is. This is the bedrock belief. If the process is fair, then we're supposed to accept the result, right? Even if we don't like it. And you can see why this is so appealing. I mean, it suggests we can build a system that's totally impartial and unbiased. But is that really what's happening?
Now, there's a fancy term for this whole concept. It's called procedural justice. And it's all about our perception. It's about whether we feel like the rulebook is fair. The theory goes, if we believe the game is fair, we're much more likely to accept the final score, whether we win or lose.
And this is what a fair process is supposed to look like in practice. According to some of the foundational research in this area, these 6 rules are the secret sauce. Is the process the same for everyone? Is it free of personal bias? Does it rely on accurate info? Can you fix a mistake if one is made? Does it represent everyone involved? And is it, ethical? When you look at it like this, it seems perfect. It sounds like a guaranteed recipe for justice at work. But here is where we get the big twist. The paper we're exploring today argues that trying to apply this beautiful, perfect ideal to a regular company is a huge mistake. It's kind of like trying to apply the laws of gravity inside a dream. The context is just all wrong. And there you have it. That is the core argument in one sentence. It's not just that procedural justice doesn't quite work in an office setting, it's a mirage. And even worse, it can be twisted into a tool for hypocrisy, where managers can point to their fair process to justify a really questionable decision. So why a mirage? Well, the paper argues the problem isn't with those 6 rules we just saw. The problem is the world we're trying to use them in. The author pulls from the work of economist Friedrich Hayek, who basically said we're getting 2 completely different kinds of systems mixed up, and each one has its own unique logic for what fair even means. Okay, this slide is key to understanding everything. On the left, we've got the market order. The best way to think about this is like the traffic laws in a city. It's a spontaneous system with impersonal rules, like stop at a red light. The rules apply to everyone, but they don't tell you where you have to drive. The outcomes, who gets where first, are decided by an invisible hand. Now, look at the right, the organization. This is a totally different beast. Think of it like a movie set. You have a director, a specific person with authority, giving very concrete commands. You stand over there. You say this line. The director, or your manager, personally decides who gets what role and who gets the rewards. Trying to paste the market's impersonal rule of law onto an organization's personal rule of authority is where everything falls apart. Okay, so if procedural justice is a mirage, what's actually real? What should we be looking at instead? Well, the paper says the answer is right in front of us. It's in our one-on-one interactions. And that brings us to something called interactional justice. This is all about the quality of how you're treated and how people communicate with you. But here's the absolute game-changing point from the paper. This isn't some consolation prize. It's not a nice little chat to make you feel better about a bad result. The argument is that the interaction is a core part of the outcome. The way a decision is explained to you is just as much a part of the result as the decision itself. And this is exactly why that interaction is so incredibly important. See, in a market system, you're dealing with impersonal forces. But inside a company, you are dealing with a person in a position of power. And that means their communication can be used for good, to genuinely solve a problem, or it can be used to manipulate, to deceive, and to create the mere appearance of fairness. Which leads us to the 2 fundamental paths that any conversation about fairness can take. Is the real goal to solve a problem together, or is it just to win the argument? And this difference is everything. A heuristic dialogue is all about solving the problem. Both people are actually trying to find the truth and reach a reasonable outcome. But an eristic dialogue, well, that's just a fight.
The goal is dominance. It's about using clever-sounding, maybe even misleading arguments just to beat the other person. And here's how it all connects. The paper argues that managers can use that mirage of a fair process as a weapon to win one of these eristic, win-at-all-costs battles.
So this is probably the most important takeaway from all of this. How do you tell the difference? How can you spot when you're in a genuine problem-solving conversation versus when you're just in a debate that someone is trying to win? Luckily, the research gives us a sort of checklist of red flags. You know, a manager who's really rigid or even hostile when you bring up a concern. Someone who uses strategic silence to just shut down the conversation. A complete unwillingness to actually persuade you, instead just falling back on because I said so. Using slick arguments to deny something you both know is true. And of course, just using bad logic that crumbles if you think about it for a second. When you start seeing these tactics, chances are you're not in a real discussion about fairness anymore. You're in a fight for dominance. And that really brings us to the final powerful question we have to ask ourselves. This pushes us to look right past the employee handbook and the official policies. The real question isn't about what's written down. It's about the quality of the actual human interactions that happen every single day. Are those conversations about a genuine search for what's right and what's true? Or are they really about crafting a believable, defensible appearance of fairness? The answer to that question? Well, it tells you everything you need to know.